Language alchemy is also an awareness practice. And this means that we're constantly engaged in noticing. So when you practice language alchemy, you become aware of the language you speak, of how it impacts you and others. You also become aware of the paradigms and the values that your language communicates and manifests, as well as you notice how your energy body, your emotional body, your intellectual and physical body are communicating to you, and you start listening to all those layers of your being or all those bodies, because when you are aware of what's happening internally, that's when you're able to start to communicate with authenticity. That's when you're able to be the author of your life, rather than repeating what you have learned to communicate that may be outdated or not in alignment with the vision of the world that you have for yourself and others.
I don't like to argue, so I say nothing and fume for days.
How do I set boundaries without sounding like a jerk?
I hate the idea that I might accidentally offend somebody, so sometimes I'd just rather say nothing at all.
Welcome to the Language Alchemy Podcast, and thank you for joining me today. This is your host, Alejandra, a transformative communication teacher and coach. I am devoted to helping multicultural individuals and couples on the path of transformation transform their lives and relationships through conscious communication. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm so happy to welcome you to episode number 100. Yes, 100 episodes. Perhaps you've been listening all along since the very first episode. If that's you, thank you so much. Or perhaps you listen here and there to episodes that resonate with you. Thank you so much. Or perhaps this is your first time. Thank you for being here. Whoever you are welcome, and I'm grateful you're here with me. And because today is the 100th consecutive episode, yes, I have released an episode every single week, 100 weeks in a row. Today, I want to share with you about what language alchemy really is. And let me tell you, I think you're going to love this. And I'm not talking about what the Language Alchemy Podcast is about, even though the name of the podcast is Language Alchemy. I'm going to talk today about the practice of language alchemy as a conscious and an evolutionary system. Whenever people hear these two words, language alchemy, they love it and they get really intrigued. They usually ask me what it is. They ask me whether it's related to Paulo Coelho's book, The Alchemist, a book I love. And people usually ask me, what is it that I've studied to come up with something that to them sounds so different than anything they've heard? Well, today you are going to get the answers to those questions and more. So let's begin. You've heard me say before that I've been intrigued by language since I was a very young child growing up in the province of Salta in northern Argentina, while I was learning my first language, Spanish. You've probably heard me talk about how I was very adamant about learning languages when I was a kid. I started studying English when I was 5 years old, German when I was 12, Italian when I was 14, and Portuguese in my 20s. And at some point, I was very fluent in all those languages. But since I don't speak all those languages on a regular basis, in present moment, I'm only fluent in Spanish and English. And you may know that I'm constantly working on my communication. I share with you about how I work with my communication in the weekly newsletters I send you. And if you don't get those newsletters, go to languagealchemy.com and you can sign up there. Now, what you may not know is that I grew up in a beautiful country and a very loving family in which there was a lot of pain because of things that some family members said to others, words that were deeply hurtful and damaging, because of things that were left unsaid, words that would have brought the possibility of forgiveness, reconciliation, healing, and well-being, but were never said, and also because of the social and political context in which I grew up that generated a lot of divisiveness among the society in Argentina and also among the members of my family. And because of the historical context in which I grew up, the words I learned to use and the words that were used put us, human beings, into categories, and depending on those categories, we related to one another as friends or as enemies. And I got to see how much pain all that caused. The words used, the words left unsaid, and the words that divided us. It caused pain to every member of my family, including myself, of course. There was something else that intrigued me as much as language did, and that was spirituality. I was raised Catholic, and in the first few years of my life, I was very steeped in the Catholic form of the Christian religion. But then I started exploring other spiritual traditions when my father, who was my first spiritual teacher, started showing me how to connect to myself, to the natural world, and to sense my own energy and space and expand my awareness and connect even to the whole universe. He started teaching me when I was around 10 years old, and his main teaching was ask questions, be curious, find the connection, and tap into the wisdom and knowledge beyond what you can experience through the senses. He taught me so much about the art and science of spiritual observation. Later on, I studied language and communication at the university. I completed 2 master programs. One was as a translator and interpreter of English and Spanish, and the other one was as a teacher of the English language and language acquisition. While I was a university student, I went through a period of depression when I was about 19 years old, and that's when my father taught me to meditate. When I learned meditation, I connected to an even deeper aspect of myself that was much deeper than the depression. And meditation not only helped me get out of that depressive state, but it also gave me the tools for a very deep self-reflection and self-connection. These life experiences and my own curiosity about language and spirituality led me to study philosophies, linguistics, Buddhist psychology, ancient wisdom traditions, neurolinguistics, mindfulness, yoga, meditation, nonviolent communication, neurolinguistic programming, neuroscience, and studying all these things guided me back to grad school, where I wanted to learn to integrate all that I was learning and studying and be able to connect the dots between the language we use, how we've learned to communicate, the impact of that communication in our lives and social groups, and spirituality. So I looked for programs everywhere, programs that could teach me how to connect these dots. And I did find a graduate school program at CIIS, the California Institute of Integral Studies, called Transformative Leadership. And this was from the School of Consciousness and Transformation. So it was perfect for me because this program was for people like me who want to connect the dots they're interested in connecting and integrating them into something new. I came out of that program with a system called Language Alchemy. Now, while you will find aspects of various fields of study, I can say today that language alchemy is a unique transformative communication system, an awareness practice, and a form of evolutionary activism. Let me break them down. Language alchemy is a transformative communication system because it's an integration of scientific approaches and holistic methods. And that integration helps you transform outdated communication patterns, access your deepest truths, and embody your capacity to have a life of authenticity and meaning. As a system, we go through a tried and proven journey that allows you to look at the communication patterns you learned and developed when you were young. So we explore the messages that you inherited and internalized and how those messages impact how you communicate and relate today. We explore those messages through compassionate inquiry processes. During this journey, you get to know how your language affects every aspect of your life. So we look at how your life and relationships are at this moment. For example, right now you may be in a place of loneliness because you don't feel understood by others. Or it may be that you have a consistent experience of insecurity because you don't know how to express what's real for you. Or it may be that you're in a place of constant conflict and drama because you don't know how to stop reacting in the ways that you later regret. Wherever you are right now, with Language Alchemy, you learn to explore how is it that things are so for you. We don't focus much on why things are the way they are because that's the work of psychotherapy. What we focus on is how things are the way they are. Because if you're able to see how your life and relationships are the way they are, you are now in a position to learn how they can be different. The language you speak is the language you learned. And so you can learn to communicate in a different language. If you learn how is it that you are communicating that leads to loneliness, insecurity, drama, or regret, then you can find how you can transform your communication so that your communication leads instead to connection, confidence, harmony, or healthy relationships. And another aspect of this journey is that I help you connect to your deepest truths by uncovering your most sincere longings about how you would like your life and relationships to be. So we look at the communication skills that you need to learn and develop to help you embody your sincere longings. With that, we look at the fundamental values that you need to be able to commit to, stand by, and manifest with your communication. So if you are experiencing loneliness and maybe you uncover that your value is one of connection, then you need to learn how to communicate in a way that leads you to connection. Or if you are experiencing a lot of conflict and drama and you uncover that you deeply value peace and harmony, then you need to learn communication skills to have the kind of peace and harmony that you are capable of learning to have in your life. As we go through this process of uncovering what's so and taking the steps to learn the communication skills that are in alignment with your values and deepest longings, we do all this with the understanding that you are an interconnected being whose growth and transformation is going to benefit not just you, but everyone you interact with and beyond. So the language alchemy system helps you ground yourself in the responsibility that you have to respect, honor, and contribute to the well-being of all others. As we uncover those outdated messages and your deepest longings, we look into the social implications and the historical context that impact your communication. To give you an example from my own experience with the language alchemy system, I compassionately uncovered the messages that I inherited about racism, homophobia, xenophobia, misogyny, white supremacy, intolerance, hatred, and fear. And once I connected to my deepest longings, values, and truths, I learned to transform my language in a way that was more in alignment with the deep love, respect, and honoring I have for all members of our human family. Once I became aware of the language that I had inherited and how, as I spoke that language, it perpetuated pain and suffering, and that was not in alignment with my deepest longings or my current values, then I learned to transform my language and use the language that can bring forth more equality and equity. And I needed to learn to do that in my internal dialogue as well as in my interactions with others, especially with others who knowingly or unknowingly still perpetuate systems and practices of oppression and pain. So as you can see, language alchemy is a unique transformative communication system. As I said earlier, language alchemy is also an awareness practice. And this means that we're constantly engaged in noticing. So when you practice language alchemy, you become aware of the language you speak, of how it impacts you and others. You also become aware of the paradigms and the values that your language communicates and manifests, as well as you notice how your energy body, your emotional body, your intellectual and physical body are communicating to you, and you start listening to all those layers of your being or all those bodies, because when you are aware of what's happening internally, that's when you're able to start to communicate with authenticity. That's when you're able to be the author of your life, rather than repeating what you have learned to communicate that may be outdated or not in alignment with the vision of the world that you have for yourself and others. And this is why I don't teach you formulas to communicate like so many other communication approaches out there. I teach you instead to pay attention and listen deeply. So, for example, I teach you how to practice awareness of your body posture when you need to have an important conversation. I teach you to notice what happens to your communication when you feel butterflies in your stomach, or how your energy impacts the words you say when you start feeling a knot in your throat, or when your voice sounds squeaky, or it makes no sounds at all. I teach you to become aware of the people close to you and notice their bodies and energies when they say something defensive, offensive, vulnerable. So as you can see, language alchemy is a constant process of awareness, because in my experience, it is when you are aware that you now have the words that are needed in the moment. You're able to have the spontaneous speech that comes from the grounded presence that the practice of awareness offers. So with language alchemy, you learn to train your mind and your ability to notice all the various layers of your being, others, and your environment. That is how you learn to communicate authentically. Authentic communication is an awareness practice. And finally, language alchemy is evolutionary activism. I shared a few podcasts ago when I reviewed Lynn Twist's book called The Committed Life, that when I read those two words, evolutionary activism, my whole being was on fire. If you've been following me for a while, you've heard me say that I believe that conscious communication is the next step in our human evolution. Because as the population of our planet grows, as we have become more mobile than ever before and we're able to move and live in parts of the planet far away from where we were born, and as the climate changes lead to more groups of people move to other parts of the planet to have access to clean air and clean water, we will need to learn to communicate with one another in new cooperative ways. If we want equality and equity, compassion, dignity, peace, respect for all members of our beautifully diverse human family, then we need to transform our language. I need to keep transforming mine, and you need to keep transforming yours. You and I, we are needed as clear, confident, and compassionate healers and catalysts. I believe that we are no longer needed as fighters and warriors. We evolve in our use of language to communicate as we evolve as a human family. And as Lynn Twist wrote in her book, The Committed Life, we don't live in an ecosystem. We are part of an ecosystem. So we communicate consciously as part of the ecosystem with the clear intention of bringing forth love, peace, collaboration, equality, and equity for all. So, yes, language alchemy is a form of evolutionary activism. And now let's recap what you've heard in this episode. In this episode 100, I shared with you what language alchemy is. In essence, language alchemy is a unique transformative communication system, an awareness practice, and a form of evolutionary activism. I would love to know what resonated for you, or if you have any questions. If you're on my mailing list and you get my Wednesday newsletters, just reply to my email. Just reply to that because you have my email address. And if you'd like to sign up so that you can get practical transformative communication tools that you can put into practice right away, and tools that are going to go directly into your inbox every week, go to languagealchemy.com and sign up. And when you sign up, you'll also have first access to knowing when my next workshop, course, or offering will be. And because I would love to spread language alchemy across the globe, help me bring language alchemy for free to more people. And how do you do that? You can either give me a 5-star review where you are listening to this podcast in any platform you're using right now, and you can share this podcast with someone you love. Next week, I am going to share with you about the principles of language alchemy. Thank you so much for listening, and a special thanks to all the people who have become language alchemists. It's been an honor to support you and witness you. Until next week, and as we say in Argentina, ciao ciao! Original music by Gary Lapoe. You can find all links in the show notes at languagealchemy.com.